Thanksgiving Eve, November 24th, 1971. A day of quiet anticipation, of last-minute travel plans, of families gathering across America. And for the passengers aboard Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, it was shaping up to be an utterly unremarkable journey. A short, hop-skip flight from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington, a mere 30 minutes in the air. The Boeing 727, a workhorse of the skies, rumbled gently on the tarmac. Passengers settled into their seats, a mix of weary businessmen, eager families, and lone holiday travelers. Security was minimal then, a trusting age where air travel felt less like a fortress and more like a comfortable bus ride. A sense of ease, almost complacency, hung in the cabin. Among them was a man who would soon etch his name into the annals of criminal legend. He was meticulously, almost anonymously, dressed. A dark suit, perfectly knotted tie, crisp white shirt, a black raincoat draped over his arm, and dark sunglasses obscuring his eyes. He carried a single, black attaché case. He was utterly nondescript, blending seamlessly into the business traveler archetype. He looked, in every way, like 1,000 other men making their way through the bustling airports of America. He gave his name as Dan Cooper when he purchased his one-way ticket. He spoke politely, his voice calm and even. As the plane taxied, he ordered a bourbon and soda from Florence Schaffner, a flight attendant. The plane took off, climbing steadily into the mild Pacific Northwest sky. 10 minutes into the flight, with the fasten seatbelt sign off, Cooper motioned to Florence. She approached, expecting a request for another drink. He handed her a folded note. Florence, initially thinking it was a lonely businessman hitting on her, tucked it into her pocket, advising him she'd read it later. Cooper leaned closer, his voice still unnervingly calm, a low rumble that cut through the engine noise. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." The casual tone, the utter lack of panic in his voice, chilled Florence to her core. She unfolded the note. The typewritten message was clear, chillingly precise. Her eyes darted to his attaché case, which he now opened just enough for her to glimpse its contents. A tangle of wires, several red sticks that looked suspiciously like dynamite, and a battery. It wasn't a bluff. The air in the cabin, moments ago so mundane, suddenly crackled with a terrifying, unspoken tension. Cooper's demands were then articulated, still in that unnervingly polite, almost considerate tone. $200,000 in $20 bills, unmarked, non-sequential, and 4 parachutes, 2 main, 2 reserve. He gave Florence specific instructions to relay to the cockpit. The flight crew, under an invisible gun, immediately complied. The sheer audacity of the demand, juxtaposed with the calm, almost gentle demeanor of the man making it, was the first hook. This was no common thug. This was something new, something unheard of. The next 2 hours were a surreal ballet of high-stakes negotiation and frantic preparation. The Boeing 727, now a floating prison, circled aimlessly over Puget Sound, a silent threat in the sky. Below, on the ground at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, SeaTac, chaos reigned. The FBI, local police, airport officials, and even the Port of Seattle all scrambled, a dizzying array of agencies trying to respond to an unprecedented event. There were no protocols for this kind of skyjacking. No one knew what to do. The atmosphere was thick with tension, confusion, and fear. Finally, after agonizing delays, Cooper's precise demands were met. The money, 10,000 crisp $20 bills, bundled and placed into a duffel bag, along with the 4 parachutes, was delivered to the plane. The exchange was meticulous. Cooper ordered the original passengers and 2 flight attendants released. Florence Schaffner and Tina Mucklow, the lead flight attendant, remained on board, along with the 2 pilots, Captain William Scott and First Officer Bob Ratachak. Cooper's calm continued, even amidst the palpable fear of those remaining. He accepted a sandwich and a second bourbon, paying for his drinks, offering to share his food. His polite, almost considerate nature was a chilling contrast to the calculated crime he was committing, making him even more unsettling. With the exchange complete, the plane was refueled, but Cooper wasn't done. His new demands were revealed, confirming the flight crew's growing suspicions about his true intentions. He ordered them to fly south towards Mexico City, but under highly specific and incredibly dangerous conditions. The lowest possible altitude, a mere 10,000 feet, at minimum airspeed, a perilous 100 knots, barely faster than a car on a highway, with the landing gear down and the cabin unpressurized. Most chillingly, he ordered the rear stairs lowered during flight. These were not the demands of someone trying to escape on foot. This was the blueprint for a parachute jump. His intimate knowledge of the Boeing 727, its systems, and its flight capabilities was astounding. It hinted at military training, perhaps even a past in aviation. The Air Traffic Control Center became a nightmare of frantic, hushed communication. The pilots, terrified but compliant, relayed Cooper's demands. The entire process was surreal, unlike anything they had ever experienced. The ground crew at SeaTac watched in stunned silence as Flight 305, a ghost of its former self, prepared for its next terrifying leg. An F-106 fighter jet was scrambled by the Air Force, ordered to stay out of sight, useless in preventing what was about to happen, able only to observe the unfolding, impossible crime. The stage was set for a daring escape or a fatal plunge. The Boeing 727, with only Cooper and the skeleton crew aboard, lumbered into the stormy dark night. The conditions were treacherous. The low altitude, the agonizingly slow speed, and the drag from the open rear stairs made the plane incredibly unstable, buffeting violently in the turbulent air. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder rumbled in the distance, and thick fog swirled around them, reducing visibility to near zero. It was the perfect storm, both literally and figuratively, for a man about to disappear. Cooper, cool and collected, gave Tina Mucklow, the remaining flight attendant, her final instructions. He ordered her to the cockpit and to remain there. He calmly went to the rear of the plane, a solitary figure illuminated by the faint cabin lights. He methodically strapped on one of the parachutes, not the best one provided, strangely enough, but one of the older, less reliable reserve chutes. He secured the duffel bag containing the $200,000 to his body, perhaps around his waist. The money, the weight of a fortune, was now his anchor, or perhaps his downfall. The flight crew, peering anxiously from the cockpit, felt a subtle lurch, a change in the plane's delicate balance. A rush of frigid air filled the cabin. At approximately 8:13 p.m., somewhere over the vast, unforgiving wilderness of southwestern Washington between Seattle and Portland, D.B. Cooper executed his chilling plan. He plunged into the black, stormy abyss. The opening of the rear stairs, the sudden rush of cold, wet air, then silence. Just the roar of the engines battling the storm. The man was gone. The crew immediately realized what had happened. Captain Scott frantically reported the incident to air traffic control. "He's gone! He's jumped!" The F-106 chase planes, flying hundreds of feet above, completely obscured by the thick cloud cover and rain, saw nothing. The vast, dark, rugged wilderness below offered no hint of a landing, no sign of a body, no trace of the fortune now falling into the void. The unforgiving landscape Cooper had jumped into was a death trap. Dense, old-growth forests, their towering trees forming an impenetrable canopy. Rugged, jagged mountains shrouded in mist. Deep, frigid rivers that snaked through canyons. Freezing temperatures that could kill in hours. It was a place where even experienced hikers could disappear without a trace, swallowed by the wilderness. For someone parachuting in the middle of a storm at night, with no knowledge of the ground below, carrying an unwieldy sum of cash, the odds of survival were incredibly low. The weather conditions were brutal, reducing visibility to zero, ensuring no one saw him go, no one saw him land. The stage was set not just for a search, but for an enduring, baffling mystery. The manhunt that immediately followed D.B. Cooper's jump was unprecedented in American history. As soon as the Boeing 727 landed at Reno, Nevada, its planned next stop after Cooper's exit, the news exploded. Thousands of FBI agents, local law enforcement from multiple states, military personnel, and eager civilian volunteers swarmed the suspected drop zone. The ground zero for the search was initially estimated to be in the rugged terrain near Ariel, Washington, along the Washougal River. The scale of the operation was staggering. Aerial searches by helicopter and plane crisscrossed the dense forests, but the thick canopy made ground visibility impossible. Ground teams, numbering in the hundreds, slogged through incredibly difficult terrain, deep mud, thick undergrowth, freezing rivers, and steep ravines. They scoured every inch of the suspected drop zone, combing through the wilderness with a grim determination. Door-to-door inquiries were launched in every tiny, isolated logging town and hamlet in the region. Every lead, no matter how tenuous, was pursued with relentless tenacity. Yet despite this massive, coordinated effort, the results were bafflingly, frustratingly, tragically nothing. Not a single trace of D.B. Cooper. No parachute was found, no discarded money bags, not a single piece of his dark suit, not a single one of the 10,000 $20 bills that should have littered the forest floor. It was as if the man, the money, and the parachutes had simply evaporated into the very air, absorbed by the unforgiving wilderness. The only thing left was the chilling silence of an empty forest and the echoes of the unanswered questions. Over the decades, a few fleeting clues emerged, only to quickly become dead ends or deepen the enigma. A potential witness claimed to have seen a man matching Cooper's description in a local bar later that night, calmly buying drinks with a wad of cash, but the lead dissolved. A possible parachute was reportedly found years later, miles from the drop zone, only be debunked as unrelated. Then, in 1980, nearly 10 years after the skyjacking, an astonishing discovery was made. A young boy named Brian Ingram, on a family outing along the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington, found $5,800 in corroded $20 bills, partially buried in the sand. These bills were confirmed by their serial numbers to be part of Cooper's ransom. But this discovery, instead of providing answers, only raised more questions. The money was found miles from the initial estimated drop zone, suggesting Cooper had survived the jump and traveled significant distance, or that the money had somehow been washed downriver, a theory that presented its own set of improbable hydrological challenges. For the FBI, the D.B. Cooper case became more than just an unsolved crime. It transformed into an enduring obsession, a black mark, a legendary failure that haunted the Bureau for generations. They poured countless resources into it for decades, chasing every lead, no matter how wild, compiling thousands of pages of reports. The case remains the only unsolved skyjacking in history, a constant thorn in the side of the world's most formidable law enforcement agency. The Phantom had won. Decades have passed since that stormy Thanksgiving Eve. The Boeing 727s of 1971 have been retired. Air travel has transformed, security measures becoming an unbreachable fortress. But the legend of D.B. Cooper persists, growing larger, stranger, and darker with each passing year. His identity and his ultimate fate remain one of history's most compelling and frustrating unsolved mysteries. The theories surrounding Cooper's survival are as varied as they are wild. Was he an experienced paratrooper, perhaps a former Green Beret or Air Force veteran, whose precise demands and knowledge of the 727 betrayed his military background? Some believe he had accomplices on the ground, waiting in the deep woods with a getaway car, whisking him away to a new life and a fortune. Did he make it out alive, disappearing into obscurity, perhaps enjoying his ill-gotten gains on some remote beach, laughing at the baffled authorities? This theory often points to his intimate knowledge of the plane and the daring precision of the jump, suggesting a highly skilled professional. But equally plausible, and perhaps more grim, are the theories of his death. The brutal weather conditions, the pitch-black night, the freezing temperatures, the unforgiving terrain, even a professional skydiver would have struggled to survive. For an amateur, or even a skilled professional, weighed down by a duffel bag full of cash and using an ill-fitting, older parachute, the odds of a successful landing, let alone survival in the wilderness, were astronomically low. The vastness of the Pacific Northwest wilderness is legendary. His body, along with the bulk of the money, could have simply disappeared, swallowed by the dense forests, buried under leaves and mud, or swept away by the powerful, frigid currents of the Columbia River, never to be found. The discovery of the partial ransom money, corroded by river water, supports the river theory, but doesn't explain the missing body or the rest of the cash. Over the years, numerous individuals have emerged as compelling suspects, each with a plausible story or circumstantial evidence linking them to Cooper. There was Richard McCoy, a former paratrooper who pulled off a similar skyjacking months later. Kenneth Christensen, a former Northwest Orient flight attendant with military experience. Robert Rackstraw, a former Green Beret with a checkered past. And William J. Smith, an engineer who seemed to fit many of Cooper's physical descriptions. Each suspect had their moment in the spotlight, their theories debated endlessly by armchair detectives and seasoned investigators alike. But ultimately, all theories fell short. Conflicting testimonies, circumstantial evidence, and the inability to ever definitively pin the crime on anyone kept the mystery alive. The enduring human fascination with D.B. Cooper is profound. Why does this single, audacious act continue to captivate the public imagination decades later? It's more than just a crime story. It's the ultimate fantasy of escape, of outsmarting the system, of vanishing without a trace. D.B. Cooper represents the unknown, the dark thrill of the unsolved, a master criminal who achieved the impossible and then simply walked away. He became a folk hero to some, a terrifying phantom to others. The FBI officially closed the case in 2016, after 45 years of active investigation, citing the overwhelming difficulty in obtaining any new, viable leads. They concluded he likely did not survive the jump. But despite the FBI's official stance, the question lingers, echoing through the canyons and forests of the Pacific Northwest. His identity, his true fate, and the exact details of his final moments are lost to history, swallowed by the cold, dark wilderness. D.B. Cooper remains a ghost, a legend whispered in hushed tones, forever remaining the Skyjacker Who Vanished, D.B. Cooper's final descent. The ultimate enigma, still flying somewhere perhaps in the annals of criminal legend.